Good morning po sa ating lahat. Ayan po. Please settle down as we are about to begin our webinar in a few minutes. Before we begin, let's read po a few reminders for this webinar. Okay, so please change your name to this format, Dost-Fnri _name. In the participant list on the right side of the Zoom window, hover over your name and click on the rename button. Please keep your microphones on mute during discussion. Questions are most welcome. We will have an open forum at the end of the discussion. You may key in also your questions at the chat box. Certificates will only be given to Zoom attendees who have successfully answered the pre-test, the post-test, and the evaluation forms. For better viewing, please click the speaker view format in the upper right portion of the Zoom window. Ensure a stable internet connection throughout the webinar, and if disconnected, just wait for the Zoom window to resume. Good morning po ulit sa ating lahat. As we are about to start po our webinar for today. Isang maganda at mapagpalang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Masaya po kami na makasama po kayo ngayong umaga para sa isa na namang iTrain webinar. Ako po si Celine Navarro at ako po ang inyong moderator sa araw na ito. Let's start our webinar with a prayer to be led by Mr. Jefferson Butch Obrero. Sir Butch?
Yes, for good morning po. Right. Let us all take a moment of silence and open ourselves in the presence of our Lord. Dear Almighty God, we glorify and thank you. You have showered us with so much blessings, and your presence continuously remind us of your guidance. May we humbly ask you to shower our speakers today of your greatest inspiration so that they may share the most of their knowledge, heart, and soul to their respective topics. May we also absorb the invaluable knowledge and experiences and put it into practice, what we may learn today. We pray that you bless all of the people in charge of this webinar, that they may be able to fulfill their tasks and the objectives that they have set may all be achieved. Your infinite blessing would mean the success of this webinar. Amen.
Okay, now let's have po our Philippine National Anthem. All right, welcome po ulit sa ating webinar sa ito. Ayan. So, as of now po, we have about 91 participants po for this webinar on food product development. So, gusto po naming malaman kung ano pong current location niyo po ngayon. So, let me pull out a survey question. So, we want to know po, where is your current location right now? Sir Butch, can we pull out our... Yan. So, So where are you currently located po? Ayan. So meron po tayo from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. Ayan. So thank you po all for joining us this morning. Ayan. So we will end our poll. So based on our survey, 65% po of our participants are coming from our Luzon and 23 participants from Mindanao and 12% coming from Visayas. So thank you po talaga sa pagsama sa amin ngayong umagang ito. Napakadami nating kasama at salamat po sa inyong kagustuhan na matuto po mula sa amin dito po sa DOST-Fnri. As you all know, one of the functions of DOST-Fnri is to develop nutritious food product to help in fighting malnutrition problem in our country. We want to share with you the process of developing food products to produce more nutritious food products that can benefit more Filipinos. So with this po, gusto po sana naming malaman kung ilan din po sa atin ang mga kasama natin ngayon ang kasalukuyang pong merong food business. So sino po kaya sa ating mga kasama ngayong umaga ang merong food business? Yan. Sir Butch, can we pull out another survey question? Ayan. So, intay po natin yung gusto po namin malaman kung sino po dito ang nag-iisip pa lang mag-food business or nag-iisip pa lang mag-venture into food business. So, intay po natin ang ating survey question. Ayan. Okay. Yan, sino po kaya sa atin ang nagbabalak na mag-food business? Ayan, sige po. Okay po. Ayan. Ayan, sige po. So, hintayin natin. Siguro mamaya after ng topic natin ay mas madami tayong maengganyo. So, mailalabas natin ang ating survey question. So, to keep off po this webinar, may I call on po our Chief Science Research Specialist from the Technology Diffusion, Science and Technology Services Division, and our current officer in charge of the Office of the Deputy Director, Dr. Milflor S. Gonzalez, for her opening remarks. Good morning po, Doc Mil.
Magandang umaga, Sean. Isang magandang at makaagham na umaga po sa ating lahat. I am delighted to welcome you all to this webinar on food product development. Natutuwa po kami, sabi nga po ni Sean, na lahat po ng major areas of the Philippines is represented. Ano po? Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Ang isa po sa mga mandato ng DOST-Fnri, ang ikalawang mandato, is to develop recommendations, tools, guidelines, and food technologies that will help improve the nutritional status of the Filipinos. Ito po ay ang mga datos na kinakalap ng aming mga researchers sa ating nutrition survey, at base po sa mga problema natin sa nutrition, kami po ay nagde-develop ng mga food technologies in particular that will help address kung ano man po itong mga problema natin sa malnutrition. Kami po dito sa FNRI takes pride in our scientific process in developing food technologies for the production of nutritious food products. We transfer this knowledge and technologies to interested individuals and companies, especially to those aspiring food entrepreneurs or those who are already in the food business. Kanina nga po ay tinanong ni Sean, sino po sa atin ngayon na nag-a-attend nitong webinar ang meron ng mga food in businesses o kaya po ay nag-iisip na ng isang magandang negosyo. We must remember that the main reason why we eat is to give nourishment to our bodies. Hence, it is also equally important that the food we sell or we will sell to our customers are safe and nutritious. Para po pag sa ganoong paraan, we also help care for the health of our customers. Sa ngayon po, napakaswerte natin that our speaker is one of the lead persons in FNRI that is in charge of developing DOST-Fnri food technologies for nutritious food products for children. We are assured of the practical and accurate information that we will gain and may help us in our own food product development. We hope that in today's webinar, we may inspire you to create, develop, and even innovate nutritious food products. And may these food products bring more income to you and your employees. We also want to thank you for using our iTrain website in the enrollment for this webinar. Our iTrain website was conceptualized way back in 2018 as a platform for the webinars conducted by DOST-Fnri. Back then, participants in our webinars were only averaging 20 participants per session. But now, we are very happy to inform you that we already have hundreds of participants attending our webinars. When the pandemic hit us in 2020, the iTrain website had to be updated to be at par with other numerous learning management systems that were also existing. Rest assured that we will continuously improve our technical services to suit your needs for continuous learning. I wish you all a fruitful morning full of learning and inspiration. At muli po, a pleasant morning to all of us. Let us keep safe at muli. Maraming salamat. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you po, Doc Mil, for opening remarks. So before we start po, habang fresh pa po tayong lahat, can we have po class picture? So may we ask everyone to please open your cameras for a screenshot po natin bago po tayo mag-start sa ating webinar. Ayan po. So, yung iba po dito talagang suki na namin dito sa iTunes sila Miss Cheryl Custodio. Ayan, lagi ko po yan silang nakakausap dito po sa ating iTrain platform. Okay? Sir Butch, can you help me screenshot po our participants? Okay po. So, okay.
We
So
have 5 panels po.
Okay po.
Right.
So for the first panel po, smile po sa ating lahat as Sir Butch take our screenshot po.
Second panel po tayo.
Okay, smile lang po kasi hindi natin alam kung saan po tayong panel na sasama. Ayan po.
Then third panel po.
Okay. Yan, may kasama din.
Last panel po.
Okay. Thank you po.
Right. Thank you po.
Thank you po. Ayan. May kasama din po pala tayong from BJMP. Yan. Thank you po for joining us this morning. Okay po. So now, our Sir Butch, pwede na ba nating ilabas yung poll natin? Kasi interested talaga tayong malaman kung meron ba ditong nagbabalak mag-food business or meron ng food business. So, ayan po. Naku, madami ang no. Ayan. Sige po, no? Ayan. Ano po ang ating survey question, no? So, mukhang sa ngayon po, madami po sa atin ang wala pa pong food business. Pero about 10% po ay meron na pong food business, no? So, meron din po kaming mga technologies dito sa DOST-Fnri that you may want to consider to adopt or sell it po to your public, to your consumers or customer. Okay. Ayan, sige. So, pero ang sigurado ay madami po sa atin ang nagko-consider na magkaroon ng food business in the future. Ayan, syempre po, napakaganda po nan. Ayan, thank you po. So now, Are you now all ready to learn po? Ayan. So, it's my pleasure po to introduce our speaker for today. So our speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Food Technology from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She also obtained her MS in Food Science, also from the same university. And she is currently involved in DOST-Fnri food product development. So if you have attended po our product launch po, so you heard her explain one of the new products developed by DOST-Fnri, which is yung Coco Biscuit namin. Okay? Let me introduce po our speaker for today, our science research specialist too from the FRDG, Miss Vanessa C. Ebanes Ramas. Good morning po, Miss Van. Miss Van?
Hello, good
Good
morning po sa
morning
lahat.
po. Ayan.
Nakakaloka, parang ang ang tagal na po nung photo na ginamit.
Yes
Okay
po,
po.
okay.
Alright po. Again, good morning po sa lahat ng andito ngayon sa ating webinar. And based po dun sa poll na ginawa kanina, I think a lot of you po who are here are really interested po in food product development or are considering developing new food products. So I hope that this webinar will be able to help you in that goal po. So allow me po muna to share my screen so that we can start po our presentation. Okay. All right. So again, I would like to thank everyone who are present here today na gusto mag-attend or gusto pang matuto about food product development. As a disclaimer po, I would like to tell you, or as a sort of disclaimer po, that the topic on food product development is really broad, as in super madami po siyang coverage. It has a lot of subtopics and that can be covered po in much more detail. However po, I'll try my best to cover as much information as possible within the time that we have today, which is, I think, 1 hour lang. Ayun. So, in the next few minutes or hour, we will talk about food product development. But first, let's talk about what food product development is not. Okay. So when we say food product development, it's not just creating a recipe and then hoping for the best. Hindi po ito porket meron ka ng food product in mind or recipe na ginagawa ay okay na po yun, go na po. This is because yung failure rate po ng food products in the markets is as high as 90%. So about 1 in every 10 products po ang nagsasucceed sa market after 5 years. This is why careful planning, extensive research, and understanding and timing your market is really important in creating a winning product. So for today's topic, again, we will first talk about food product development, and then we'll talk about ideation or concept development, and then formulation or prototype development, and then processing, a little bit about commercialization, and of course, your key players in product development. So by definition po, when we say food product development, it is the process of creating, processing, and commercializing a new food product. So basically, when we say food product development, it is a basic activity po in food industry. So when you are considering going into food business, of course, hindi po mawawala ang food product development. So you will find na yung mga big and established food companies, they have lots of, even small, medium enterprises, they have different mix of food products and each of them are constantly evolving. So when we say evolving, this is because a food product goes through what we call a product life cycle. So after development, the product will undergo the introductory period. So that is when your product is first launched. So at this point, you want the people to know about your product, so you market it heavily. Now comes the growth part after the introductory period, so the growth phase, and then after some time mapapansin mo that nagpa-plateau or there is no growth na on the sales. So that's the maturity part. So you will find that the repeat buyers usually maybe decline buying the product, or yung mga new markets na fully tapped mo na. And then yung competition mo has already began to grow. So you still get sales, but there's no growth in profits na. After some time, you will find that the competition starts to, your competition may start to beat your product. So that's the part where nagde-decline na yung sales mo. And then at this point, the product becomes too costly to maintain. So you will have to think whether to stop producing the product or start another cycle again. So we do food product development, or we do product development in general, because first we want to address specific consumer wants or consumer needs. Its first reason is consumer driven. As mentioned earlier po by Doc Mill, at Dost-Fnri, so at our agency, it is our mandate po to develop food technologies that will address the nutrition problems of Filipinos. So we know their nutritional status, and we address them through development of nutritious food products. Now, on the other hand, you do food product development because of the market. So you may want to increase your market share, or you want a share of your competitors' market. And another reason for product development is maybe you want to capitalize on a new technology or a new innovation. So based on these reasons, we can classify the products that we develop, most of the products that we develop, into three. So we have line extension, so we have new to the world, and we have me too products. When we say line extension, this is the easiest and the shortest to develop, because you just do improvement or revisions of your already existing product. For example, a food product, or you're developing a beverage, you have a beverage product and then you want to develop a new flavor for that beverage. Or say, for example, if I'm allowed to mention a brand, say si Coke, meron siyang regular Coke, then meron din siyang Coke Light, meron din siyang Coke Zero, something like that. Another one is the new to the world. So this one is, it could be new to your company or really new products. So this usually takes the longest time to develop, because it may require a separate processing line, or a separate process, or a separate different set of people to produce the product. On the other hand, yung Me Too products, these are really common, because these are copies of existing products in the market. So you see people get attracted. So for example, this particular food product, so you want a share of the market, so you develop food product just like the product that is currently in demand or on trend. So that's a Me Too product. There are different stages in food product development. So the key stages here, we start with ideation, or yun pong tinatawag nating concept development, and then formulation, or the prototype development, and then we go through processing, and then finally the commercialization stage. So bawat stage po, or even within stages, meron po tayong checkpoints to help us decide whether to stop or continue the project. This is what we call the stage and gate system. So it makes strategic use of our time and resources in product development. We'll talk about them in detail later on. So our first step is the ideation or the concept development. So this is where you come up with new product concepts, of course. Now, for bigger companies or for more established food manufacturing businesses, the development of ideas usually come from the marketing team with supplementation, of course, of the R&D team. If you don't have the team yet or your marketing team yet, you can start with identifying consumer preferences. So, or as a consumer yourself, you can ask yourself, ano ba ang kailangan ko or ang need ko na hindi pa available sa market? You can start with that. Also, knowing the current and the target market or the current food trends and the target market for those food trends can help you also generate new ideas. For example, maalala nyo yung nung nag-pandemic, so naging patok yung or nag-trend yung ube cheese pandesal, yung dalgona. So when you want to know about food trends, so you can refer to food magazines, professional organizations, or even food companies. They share predictions or food trends that you can refer to so that you will be abreast or informed or aware of the current food trends or market food trends. For example, in 2021 po, the Institute of Food Science and Technology published their trend predictions for this year. And these are yung alternative proteins like your alternative meats and milk alternatives. So if you noticed, a lot of mga fast food companies now offers alternative meats or yung mga plant-based burgers, mga ganon na. So they are on trend right now. Another trend is our discerning consumers. So more and more consumers are now very conscious about the food that they consume or they eat. So they want something na healthy. They're very concerned about their well-being. Another trend is the upcycling of food waste. So as you know, the prices of raw materials are now increasing. So companies are looking for more income opportunities para dun sa mga materials na they consider as waste previously. And of course, because of the pandemic, so a lot of people are stressed. So another trend also is food product na will answer or will be help anxiety or sleeping, something like that. So ito pong example, this is a beverage that can help you sleep. And of course, the pandemic has stressed the importance of food safety, especially in our food manufacturing and food establishments. So we have we put huge emphasis on food safety as a food trend for this year. Now, another way to generate ideas is to do market screening. This means you are checking or you want to distinguish the profitable ideas and market opportunities by assessing the market. What you can do is you can check the market size, the saturation, the competition. And one example of doing this is to go to for example, a supermarket mismo. You can do supermarket checking. Pwede kang mag-observe kung ano bang mga products ang binibili usually ng mga consumers, ano ba ang bago dun sa supermarket na yon. Or you can also do research, internet research. I think for students, they get a lot of their ideas through journal research or journal checking or literature review. Okay, so as a food product developer, I know it is difficult to accept, but just because you think it's a good idea, it's a good product idea, does not mean everyone else does. So in fact, in food product development po, you may need to develop food products na hindi po kayo ang target market. So nevertheless, just keep the ideas coming po. So kasi paano kayo pipili ng magandang idea if you only have one or two? So you have to keep on generating ideas, and once you have generated several product concepts, you can now screen them to determine whether they're worth investing your time and money, kasi mag-i-invest po talaga kayo ng time and money in developing new food products. So you can determine whether isa-scrap nyo na ba yung idea na yon, or pause, or go. So here are examples of screening guides to help you in screening your food product concept. So you can check some marketing side if you check your potential market size, and then yung competition nyo, yung competing products, then kung yung pricing nyo ba for these food products are acceptable, or do you have marketing resources to market these food products. In terms naman of production, you can check whether the food products you are going to develop are compatible with your existing product lines. Kung madali bang mag-source ng raw materials na gagamitin, are the raw materials available all year round? May season ba siya? Do you think you can get more once you scale up? And then in terms of technical skills also, and the legal requirements, because there are food products, or for example, food ingredients that requires separate, may certain legalities po pagdating dun sa particular food ingredient na yun. Another one is on the development side. So do you have the know-how to produce this food product? Is it your strength? For example, if you're a beverage company, can you produce chips or snacks, something like that? And then, of course, very important is on the financial side. So do you have the financial capability to produce, to market? And then after marketing, do you have the financial capability to support the product afterwards? So do you think profits or returns are guaranteed? So you can answer that through, of course, your searching. And you have to consider different aspects when you do screening. So as you can see, a product idea po may be brilliant or wonderful at first glance. So wow, ito magandang product concept to. However, if it will not fit the overall claims or aims of your company, of course, may possibility talaga na ma-reject siya. So when we say screening, it's done usually in stages. So say if you have started with 20 food product ideas, and then once you subject them to our screening guide or to your screening guide, you will then be left with say 3-4 product ideas. And then you can rank these ideas further. You can involve consumer testing or concept, or you can involve target consumers in what we call the concept testing. So when we say concept testing, an example of this is when you do a consumer survey, so you want to gain information to justify your product idea. Pwede ka rin dito makakuha ng additional information on your product type, or mga gustong flavor or texture profiles ng inyong consumers or target consumers. You can also ask kung anong preference nila pagdating sa pricing, pagdating sa packaging, do they want a bigger packaging, or they want something small that they can consume on the go, parang ganon. And also the overall acceptability and other product attributes. Dito po sa F&RI, what we usually do is we do focus group discussion. We invite or we get a sample from the same demographic as our target population. Or for example, if you want to develop food products targeted towards children, or or those na infants. So we invite mothers kasi they usually are the one who buy or do grocery and prepare the food. If you want to get a larger population, you can do concept testing wherein you interview or do surveys. You can do this online or you can do this face to face. Another thing that you can do to check your product ideas is you can do patent searching. This is because you want to avoid patent infringement, especially if you're going to develop new to the world products or yung Me Too products natin na tinatawag. Because there are companies who protect their product or their process through patenting it. So what you can do is you can search through our very own patent office database, the IPOPHIL, or the World Intellectual Property Organization, or the WIPO, the European Patent Office through ESPASnet, and through Google Patents. So searching using these databases are free. So what you can do, you can search the product that you are interested in, and then if you can see similar products or process na file na or nakapatent na, you may need to adjust or you need to make necessary adjustments to avoid potential lawsuits. All right. So after our concept development, once we have the product concept na or it's decided upon, you will need a formulation starting point. So what we do is we conduct trial runs. Okay, so may we request for our technical team to open our poll question? Do I need to stop sharing po ba?
No need po, Miss Van. Okay lang po.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our poll question: converting weights of ingredients to volume measurements can make it easier to track changes in formulation. Is this a yes or a no? Ayan. So, Miss Van, parang nahahati yung ating
Oo nga.
yung ating answers na ating mga participants. So, as of now, Miss Van, we have about 117 participants na for this webinar. So,
Okay.
ayan. So, should we end the poll po? So, about 60% ay sabing yes and about 39% ang nagsabing no. Hindi na daw kailangan i-convert to volume measurements. Ms. Van,
Okay. All right.
back to your lecture.
Yes. Okay. So I'll close this one now. Okay. So again, as I've said earlier, with prototype development or the formulation, we will need a recipe or a starting point in our formulation, diba? So in conducting trial runs, our aim is to convert the recipe to a formulation. So what we do is we convert volume measurements to weight measurements. Hindi po the other way around. So, for example, when we say volume, it's say 1 cup or 1 teaspoon, something like that. So you want to convert it to weight measurement because we want it to be more scalable in the production. The reason is because when you convert it to weight, it's more accurate kasi there are different sizes of tablespoons pala in the market. I mean, kahit sinasabi nilang 1 tablespoon ito, there are different tablespoons na nagsasabi din na tablespoons pero hindi sila magkaparehas. What I'm trying to say is that when we convert it to weight, it's easier to track the changes. It's more accurate. It's always the same at any point. You can convert it easily to percentage, which is very important when you're making formulation. So again, you have to remember that when you conduct trial runs, you start with a recipe, right? So you start with kung ilang teaspoons and ilang cups, but then you want to convert that recipe in volume format to weight measurement. After converting that recipe to a formulation, you may want to do you want to check material balance. So The reason why we want to do this is we want to check the processing loss or processing yield, the moisture loss or the moisture gained, for example, and fat loss and fat gain also. So the easiest way to do this is to check your ingredients, the weight of your ingredients versus the weight of your final product. So you need for the information that you will gain from this for a lot of things, for feasibility, for understanding the functionality of your ingredients, for converting liquid ingredients to dry ingredients, should you decide to convert them along the way. So material balance is also important. Okay, so a short think break, but I think hindi ko na din to patatagalin kasi we are short of time na. It's just think of this as an assignment. So you are a bakery company and you want to introduce a new product for nutrition conscious millennials. So you think of at least 3 product ideas, and then you rank your ideas based on the screening guide that we had earlier. Or maybe you can have your own screening guide. It's up to you po. Okay, so the next part after our is the ingredient sourcing. So when we say we want the best ingredients for a product, it's because the end products are only as good as their ingredients. So for established food manufacturing companies, there are contracts already in place for ingredients and approved suppliers. New businesses, on the other hand, you need to source ingredients that meet the quality standards and your volume requirements. So what you need to consider are the following. So it should have consistent quality. You need to consider consistency, especially in terms of color, flavor, moisture content, etc. So not just for that particular batch, but in between lots. So that is why ingredient specification is needed or required. Other concerns also like cost, shelf life, safety, handling, availability, you also need to consider them. When you're starting kasi with food product development, you are sourcing from say sa groceries or some markets, but when you scale up, industrial ingredients are preferred for ease of handling and storage compared to grocery store or fresh ingredients. If you cannot afford to source in bulk yet, just make sure that the ingredient supplier is the same, your farm supplier is the same, your variety, for example, of an agricultural material or agricultural ingredient is the same. Here is an example of a specification sheet for a flour. So you can see my specification shop. Ito po yung pinibigay ng supplier dun sa namimili pag bumili sila, for example, in bulk. Or you can actually request this even if you're not buying in bulk. When we start our trials, as I've said earlier, you are starting with ingredients that you can source from the department or the grocery store, I'm sorry, and the market. But eventually, you may want to scale up your production, and then you may want to consider sourcing industrial or bulk industrial ingredients. Okay, so once you have the set process of how you will produce your products and you have your ingredients already set, you will then need to break down the process or your process in terms of individual steps. So as I've mentioned kanina, you start with a recipe in doing or in producing your food product, diba? So once you have the recipe, you will need to break down the process in terms of individual step. So for example, this is a recipe in producing a cookie, I think. So once you have the recipe, you break down the recipe in terms of processing steps like this book. So you weigh the ingredients, you cream the butter, beat, stir, shape, bake, cool, and pack. So your goal is to think about the process in terms of the function of each step. So, ano bang importance ng particular step na yon? How does it affect your ingredient? And what equipment is needed in order to perform said step? Okay. So, another think break. Say you want to develop or you have decided to develop cookies with added fiber. This is for, you want to consider this as a healthy stack for millennials. So what changes do we need to the product or the process? Or what do you think are the effect of these changes to the product? How does the addition of fiber affect the formulation? What changes do we need to adjust in the process by adding for example, the fiber? And ano po kaya ang effect ng pag-add natin ng fiber sa acceptability ng cookies? In order to answer both those questions, we conduct experiments to test our guesses. So, like I said earlier, if you want to add fiber to the cookies, will it affect the acceptability of the cookies? How about the texture? Maapektuhan kaya niyo yung texture? So, when doing experiments, we decide which changes, we call it factors, need to be made. The most common way for us to do this is to test one factor at a time or one variable at a time. We call it OFAT or OVAT, or one factor at a time or one variable at a time. Just yun lang po yung meaning ng OFAT at OVAT. When you do a trial run or production run or an experiment, it is important to only change one ingredient type or one ingredient amount or one processing step at a time to track and understand the results of each experiment. Hindi po pwedeng dalawang ito-change nyo, for example, for this particular batch and then another batch, iba na naman ang ito-change nyo. So you change one particular factor, one thing at a time para alam nyo po ano ba ang effect nung ni-change nyo dun sa product mismo. Kasi if you change more than one, or if you do more than one changes to the product, it would be difficult for you to separate the effect of those changes. So going back to our example po on cookie with added fiber, say you want to check the type of fiber to add to your cookies and then the amount to be added. So for example, I want a fiber type A or fiber type B, and then the fiber amount in 3% or 6%. So this is assuming that the fiber content is 100% fiber, which is not usually the case, but just for the purpose of this discussion. So your experiment may look like this. So you start with checking the effect of fiber type. So you make one batch with fiber A, and then another batch of cookies with 3% fiber B. And then you compare the cookies from this batch. So you compare the cookie made with 3% fiber A and 3% fiber B. So you want to know which cookies do you like better? Is it cookies with 3% fiber A or 3% fiber B? And then you decide, mas masarap pala si cookies with 3% fiber B, tapos mas okay yung texture niya. So what you can do next is you check whether mas okay ba si 3% fiber B versus si 6% fiber B naman. So pag tinaas mo kaya yung percentage ng fiber dun sa cookies mo, may effect pa din kaya? So what we're doing here is we're changing or making one change at a time. You're comparing products with isa lang talaga ang na-change dun sa dalawang batches na yon para hindi ka mahirapan mag-isip kung ang effect ba ng dun sa ang reason ba kung bakit mas gusto mo to is because dahil dun sa change mo or may iba pa bang factor. Kaya again, I would like to emphasize that when you do experiments in developing your product, it's important to make one change at a time for this particular method for OVAT or OFAT. Now, say for example, nagdagdag tayo? What if nagdagdag tayo ng factors? Hindi lang yung fiber type, hindi lang yung fiber amount ang kailangan nating i-change. Meron pa palang ibang factors na nakaka-affect dun sa acceptability ng product. For example, cooking time, cooking temp, ratio of fiber to flour. So kanina madali lang kasi ano lang yon, 4 na experiments lang ang gagawin mo at least. 'Di ba? Kasi once ma-check mo, okay na, di proceed ka na sa next factor. But what about when you have several factors to consider? So that means ang dami mong gagawing experiments, which means it is expensive and time consuming. And what if may mga factors ka pala na dependent sa isa't isa? For example, your cooking time and cooking temperature, hindi mo pala ma-separate yung effects nila. They are dependent on each other. So hindi mo siya ma-determine when you use the method OFAT or OVAT. So what we recommend is using of the design of experiment or DOE. So for example, like RSM, it is a cost-effective solution to a confusing and a complicated problem. Design of experiments is widely used for product and process development. So by using DOE, you can handle many factors simultaneously. Pwede kang magawa ng isang experiment na lahat na yun gagawin mo na lahat, hindi na isa-isa. Hindi mo na siya i-check isa-isa. So you can handle many factors simultaneously, which means you can save time, you can reduce your cost, and you can test a lot of formulation or ingredients or treatments by using reliable statistics. So for example, if at the start, we have several factors to consider, what we do is we conduct screening. So we do this to identify the most important factors that affect the process quality or the process formulation. We want to know if yung factor ba na yun significant ba ang effect dun sa quality or acceptability ng product or whatever response na interesado ka. For example, in the cookie. Sa cookie example natin, we have a lot of factors na we consider, diba? So alin kaya dun sa factors na yun ang importante? Alin kaya dun sa factors na yun ang significant para dun sa, say for example, yung texture ng cookie, yung acceptability ng cookie. So if you have a lot of factors to consider at the start, you can do screening para matanggal mo na yung hindi naman pala importante dun sa product mo. Once we know which factors are important through screening, we then want to know kung ano nga ba yung combinations and levels of these factors which can give us the best product. So what we do is we do optimization. When we say best product pala, it's relative ha. It's relative to the constraints that you set. For example, hindi ibig sabihin na siya na yung pinakamataas ang acceptability, yan na yung best product. Kasi you also have to consider other things. For example, siya nga yung pinakamataas ang acceptability, pero siya naman yung pinakamahal. So, for example, you want ganito lang na acceptability, kahit okay lang sa'yo, kahit hindi ganun kataas ang acceptability, pero hindi din ganun kamahal i-produce. So, pagdating sa optimization, it is you, the product developer or the experimenter who will decide kung ano ba ang sa tingin mo ang mako-consider mo as best product. So you will be the one who will set the constraints or the limit. You can set constraints for, say for example, yung physicochemical properties niya, yung sensory attributes niya, yung cost niya, and then you can plug that in your experiment or in the software, and then the software will compute it for you. What we use in you can use a lot of softwares, by the way, but most commonly used one is Design Expert, and I think we also have, I forgot the other one, but we mostly use DX or Design Expert. So we use the statistical software to design our experiment, and then we conduct production runs. The software will then tell us or help us determine the optimum or best formulation or best parameters based on the conditions that we set. And then once we have the processing parameters identified to make our best or optimum product, we then conduct a series of standardization runs to validate the optimum formulation or the optimum process parameters. So with standardization runs, what we usually do is we conduct the process at least 3 times with, say, different personnels and different days, just so we know that even if we do it with other person or other day, the same results pa rin ang makukuha namin. So that's for the design of experiment. So when you have several factors to consider. Now, the next part is in the analysis, or simultaneous to you conducting the experiments, you also need to verify the results of the experiments through analytical testing. So you measure the attributes or the product characteristics needed for the product specifications in terms of quality, acceptability, and of course, safety. Also, when we determine which changes will be made in the product, so kung ano na yung changes na na-identify mo, of course, you also have to identify the parameters that will be tested as a result of that change. The product characteristics are evaluated through physicochemical analysis, for example, pH, moisture content, water activity, color, etc. So that's for quality checking. Chemical analysis is done to assess the chemical profile or nutrient profile of your product, for example, protein content, fat content, sugar content, vitamins, and mineral content. Another one is you need to check the product safety. So microbiological analysis is conducted also. Functional analysis naman is done also to assess product quality, for example, yung viscosity, solubility of your product. And of course, very important, if you want to know if the products are liked by consumers, sensory evaluation is conducted. We conduct consumer acceptability and, for example, consumer acceptability, QDA testing is conducted. So at FNRI, we have trained panelists who do the descriptive or check the descriptive attributes of the product. And we also have consumer type panelists for acceptability. Okay, so another think break. So say we have identified cookies with added fiber. So ano-ano kaya yung mga analysis or tests that we can do to the product? So based on the things I have discussed kanina, maybe we can do sensory analysis, texture analysis, moisture analysis, and of course, checking of fiber. So that's part of the chemical analysis. Okay. So after you have done the analytical, all those things in the formulation stage, you may want to check the product, the viability of the product prototype that you have developed. So at this stage, you can do consumer testing or test marketing to check whether you have consumer interest to continue with your scale-up process. So at this point, maybe hindi ka pa nakapag-invest dun sa scale-up equipment or dun sa malalaking equipment. So say, pwede kang maghanap ng test kitchen or maybe approved processing facility that can do small batch processing to make your samples. Also, at this point, you may want to consider applying for protection for your process or formulation. At FNRI, we usually, since we intend to transfer the technologies to our prospective adopters, kasi hindi po kami nagpo-produce ng products, we only develop technologies which we then license to businesses. We need to protect the formulation and the process that we have developed. So we file for IP protection prior to licensing our technologies. Please note also that by filing for IP protection, you are required to divulge your process and the formulation. So if you don't want to do that, if that's not the case for you, then you may want to opt with trade secrets na lang. So with trade secrets, there no registrations or applications necessary, but you just have to make sure that confidentiality agreements are in place, especially if you're the owner and the products being developed by your R&D team, or for example, before handing it to your production team. So you just want to make sure that confidentiality or agreements are in place prior to say upscaling your production. All right, so the next stage po is the processing stage. So from our laboratory or kitchen scale, you will now need to scale up the processing. So your intention here is to simulate commercial production and finalizing your product specifications. So when we say scale up processing, the pilot scale can be around 10 to 50% of industrial scale production. Okay, so for scaling up, you will need to refer to your process flow. So remember the process flow that you made dun sa second stage when you convert your recipe to the flow diagram or the flow chart. So you will need to refer to your process flow and use the functions of each processing steps for you to choose larger scale equipment. So important to consider po is when you have to take note that each time you go up in size of equipment or change the equipment or controls when you scale up, the product characteristics have the potential to change. So yung changes po na to could be because of the differences in equipment, the equipment capacity, or just the volume to surface ratio of your equipment. For example, when we used high-speed mixer upon scaled up, so when we tried mixing, so we noticed that heating the raw materials can cause more moisture to be removed. So those are some of the things that you can consider when you scale up your process. Example here is the mixing. So you start with a small mixer and then you go up dun sa capacity. So you have the batch type mixer and then the industrial mixer. For dough forming naman, say, nag-start ka with just a scooper, and then you, for batch type or for pilot scale, you go with batch type dough depositor, and then you go with industrial dough depositor as you move to the larger scale. And then for packing, you may find that you'll start with an impulse sealer, and then when you scale up, you'll be using flow packing machines. So those are examples lang po. So during scale up, you may want to compare, or you need to compare samples from the scale up processing with your prototype samples from the prototype development stage. And then you may find that you will need to adjust your ingredients or your process accordingly. If yung nakita nyo naman na yung changes acceptable na or hindi naman significantly affecting the product's quality or safety, then you set your final product specifications. At this point also, any changes made to your process will have to be reflected in your updated flow diagram. So after with updating your flow diagram, if there's a need for it to be updated after you scale up, you finalize po your SOPs, your food safety plans, and then we put controls in place. So setting ingredient specification can help ensure that you get safe and consistent final products. Now, your ingredient specification should specify yung quality, yung safety, at yung storage ng ingredients to be used in the product. Kasi it helps you determine whether to accept or to reject an ingredient. Just make sure po that the specifications are tight enough to ensure that na consistent yung product mo. Hindi yung masyadong malaki ang range if needed, kasi you want to ensure that you are making or producing a consistent product. So how do you make or set an ingredient specification? So first, what you can do is you request ingredient spec sheets or COA, Certificate of Analysis, for industrial ingredients. When you buy from suppliers, you can ask for spec sheets or COA for that particular ingredient. Some or most suppliers naman, they give spec sheets when you request. That is why also maganda rin talagang na mag-source ka ng ingredients directly sa supplier or the manufacturer if possible. Second, one guideline that you can refer to is the Fda Circular 2013-010. This is for microbial analysis or the microbial standards for a particular ingredient or food product. And then another one is you choose the most important characteristics and you set your own specifications. So this is an example of an ingredient spec sheet. So you have there the ingredient, the name of the ingredient, and kung ano yung important attributes for you. For example, yung moisture, color, that's ang pinaka-importante kasi talaga is the moisture and the color for say for example for flours and dry ingredients. In this case, meron din silang in-include na viscosity. Sometimes you will also need to include other attributes pa. You can also add a column for your preferred supplier and then microbial specifications, which some of these you can find with FDA, or you can refer to Fda Circular 2013-010. And then yung receiving or storage conditions, kung saan ba siya isa-store, ano bang temperature na kailangan, and then list of potential labeling concerns, in particular yung potential allergens. Okay, next, aside from quality also, you need to consider food safety. So food safety is very important aspect of a food product. You need to have a plan in order to make sure that the product you are making is safe or can be safely consumed by your consumers. So kaya tayo naggagawa ng plan because if things can go wrong or when things go wrong, you have a set of procedures to follow na. So in making a plan, you consider all relevant and reasonable risk, and then you set controls in place so that these things will not happen. If ever these happen, may nakalagay ng nakasulat na kung anong gagawin mo when these happen. Now, food safety issues that may threaten a food product includes contamination from physical, let's say for example, hair, glass, metal pieces, chemical, as in yung mga pesticides, cleaning solutions, or possible leaching of chemicals from packaging, and then microbial agents. Another one is the natural toxicants. Ito yung mga naturally present sa food, like for example, yung mga food allergens. And another one is on food tampering. So you also need to consider this one as well. Do you know the issue on the Tylenol and Tylenol's food safety seal? Sino kaya dito ang aware sa issue on Tylenol and the food safety seal? Anyone po from our audience? Meron po ba sa inyong familiar dito sa Tylenol and safety seal issue? Oh, si Ma'am Mary Antoinette. Iyon. Anyway po, so chika. So in 1982, yes, Ma'am Mary, That was the reason why seals are placed in bottles. So yes, but what happened was in 1982, Tylenol capsules were laced with potassium cyanide. So it killed 7 people in Chicago as a result of tampering. So wala pa kasi yung seal before. So as a result, the company who made Tylenol, Johnson & Johnson, they recalled all 31 million bottles of their product, which is equivalent to a loss of maybe around 31 or 100 million US dollars. So what Johnson & Johnson did after was they created the safety seal or the tamper resistant capsule. So it made its way to the safety seal that we see today. So kaya po naging requirement or one of the things that you consider when on making your product or the packaging of your product is the safety seal. So you see, contaminants in food can lead to recalls, negative press, and of course monetary consequences to the company. Especially if you're just starting your company or kahit yung mga established food companies na any food safety related concerns, especially now in the advent of social media na ang bilis-bilis kumalat ng mga issues. So you really have to put emphasis on the food safety plans or food safety aspect in food product development. So that's the reason why you have to have a food safety plan to ensure that the product risks are controlled. So in making your food safety plans, you usually start with the good manufacturing practices. So I think a lot of you have heard of GMP na, or those who have, especially those who are producing their own food products now or selling their food products now. So the GMP is a set of procedures to be carried out to prevent adulteration of your product. On the other hand, SOP naman or standard operating procedures, excuse me, are written instructions on how to carry out a certain operation. So think of SOP as like a recipe book. So let's just say pag kayo ay magluluto ng pagkain. So think of SOP as like the recipe in producing that particular dish. On the other hand, GMP naman are the behavioral practice of say washing your hands before cooking, using clean utensils, cleaning up after. So ito po ay very simplified version lang of GMP versus the SOP. GMP and SOP po are the prerequisite programs in order to implement HACCP. Ano nga ba ang HACCP? When we say HACCP, it stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. So it is a system that assesses the risk in the operation and then identify hazards, establish controls, and monitor the controls. So before we proceed, I'll just like to show you na lang po an example para you can distinguish the difference, especially those who are new to the concept of SOP and HACCP. So I'll share my screen na lang po. Okay, so this one is an example of a food safety plan for, as our example, yung cookie natin. This is the HACCP plan. Ito yung, so meron tayong, we have a column for identifying yung hazard, and then we have a column for the critical control points, the limit, and then paano natin i-monitor yung procedure, and then you establish your corrective actions, and then how do you establish, or how do you verify? So you establish verification procedures, and then you also have a column here for keeping records of the procedures that you did. So this one naman is an example of an SOP. So as you can see, this is the SOP. So in making yogurt, meron ditong procedure, nakalagay kung anong mga temperature ang gagamitin, kung ano yung process, and then the set of processes or steps for that particular process. Okay, so I'll stop sharing po muna, and then I'll share my presentation again. So if you are interested naman po in developing your food safety plans, you can refer to your DOST regional offices, because they have the food safety team that can help you in establishing po, or they also conduct mga certain trainings. So they help po mga food manufacturers, MSMEs in particular, in establishing or in creating or drafting their SOPs, their HACCP or HACCP. And they also conduct a lot of mga relevant trainings on this part. So if you're interested, you can write or consult or go to the nearest DOST regional offices in your area. Okay, so after your food safety plan, you also need to consider the packaging part. So a packaging, when we say packaging, it serves as a containment, a protection. It can also help maintain or extend the product shelf life. And it also communicates or markets these information or the information of the product to your customer through the label. And of course, since you have a packaging, it provides convenience or utility for the consumer. So it's easier for them to transport your product if they are stored or if they are placed in a packaging. Here are the common materials na ginagamit for packaging. So you have paper, plastic, glass, metal, but combinations of these materials are also available in the form of laminate. So you have paper metal, metal plastic, paper plastic. So those are also available. Now, what are the considerations in choosing your packaging? So you have to consider first the product compatibility, the processing requirements, shelf life, and cost. When we say product compatibility, you need to consider ano bang protection ang kailangan ng product mo. So is it protection against the light? For example, in foods with vitamin A, is it against moisture? For example, yung mga powders natin na hygroscopic, or is it against oxygen? For example, if you are selling coffee beans, or it could be from breakage, like for example, meron kang cookies or biscuits. Yun yung mga consideration mo when it comes to product compatibility. On the other hand, for processing requirements, you need to think if kailangan pa ba nung packaging mo, does the packaging need to provide additional function to your product? For example, kung kailangan ba niyang mag-withstand ng processing in canning, in vacuum sealing, or in hot filling, or kung compatible pa siya dun sa processing line mo. Another one is the for shelf life. So different packaging kasi offers different degree of protection from agents that can affect your product or the product shelf life. So you also have to consider this one, kung gusto mo ba, okay lang ba sa'yo no 1 week lang, or gusto mo ba longer than that, kung, especially if you are aiming for products na, like for example, if it's for kailangan pa niyang i-travel, so you also have to consider that. And then last one is, what type of packaging can your product afford? So you also have to consider the cost. I think a lot of you, or especially doon sa mga smaller processors, they first of the consideration is the cost, but you also have other things to consider also when choosing the best packaging for your food product. Okay, so before we proceed to the next subtopic, may I ask the technical team to open another poll?
Yes po, Miss Van. Ayan, ang dami nang natututunan ng ating mga participant, no? So, just a breaker po. So, we have another poll. Nutrition facts are not required in the mandatory label information. Is it a yes or a no? Or not required? So, mukhang Miss Van, about 93 or more than 90% answered no to our poll
No.
question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you po
Thank you
sa
po
ating
sa
mga
mga
participant
nagsagot.
and we will continue po with our lecture.
Okay. So again, I think most of you are aware naman that nutrition facts are considered as mandatory label information as mandated by FDA. So here are the mandatory label information from FDA. So first, you need to have brand name or trademark. And then you also need to have the product name. And then a complete list of ingredients in descending order. And then yung net content, or if you have a product submerged or with syrup or in brine, you need to declare the drained weight. And then the name and address of the manufacturer, the repacker or importer, trader, distributor, lot identification, and if your product needs to be stored at other conditions aside from yung ambient room temperature, you need to also declare or specify the storage condition. Expiry date. In the Philippines, we use the expiry date format with this format, yung date, and then month, and then year. Food allergen information, if your product, if it's applicable sa product mo, you need to declare also food allergen information. And again, dun sa poll natin kanina, nutrition facts or nutrition information, nutritive value is mandatory po. It's considered as one of the mandatory label information by FDA. So I think a lot of food products that we see, I mean, not a lot, but maybe, sige, sabihin na natin a lot. Food products in the market right now don't have nutrition facts. When you apply for CPR of your product, you will be required to submit nutrition facts. So I think a lot of people or food processors are considering kasi the cost in testing their product for nutrition facts. But for this po, maybe you can request assistance from the nearest regional offices po in terms of analysis and drafting of NutriFacts. So for this one is just basic information kasi I think FDA also conducts a training or a seminar on mandatory label information. So for details on the requirements, kasi ang dami pa talaga ng requirements, especially if you have, for a certain food product, there are other requirements and exemptions. So you may refer to the FDA AO 2014-0030 for the other details on the mandatory labeling. Okay, so after the labeling, we need to consider also product shelf life. So when we say shelf life, this is a period of time under defined conditions of storage after manufacture or packing, for which a food product will remain safe and fit for use. So during the period of shelf life, when we say product shelf life, ibig pong sabihin, the product should retain the desired sensory, chemical, physical, functional, or microbiological properties and comply with any label declaration of nutrition information when stored according to recommended conditions. So for example, pag meron siyang dineclare doon na nutrition information doon sa label niya, na, for example, sabihin natin doon sa cookies natin, high in dietary fiber. So it means after, dapat doon sa span nung shelf life ng product before mag-end yung kanyang before ang kanyang expiry date, dapat ma-meet pa niya yung claim niya na high in dietary fiber, which means about 20% doon sa product. 20% of the, or around 6 grams per 100 grams. That's for the high. Okay, so one of the things na laging tinatanong sa amin is, paano ba namin ma-increase or paano ba natin mapapahaba ang shelf life ng product? Ano ba ang kailangan namin gawin? Yes, longer shelf life po is desirable since it means mas easier siyang i-distribute. Of course, there will be lesser waste. Pero when we think about shelf life, hindi sana natin agad isipin na ano kayang magandang preservative for this food product. Isipin natin, what changes can we do to the product or the process to help in extending the shelf life of this particular food product? Are you familiar po with this guy? Sino po ang familiar po dito sa person? Sino po kaya ang familiar? Meron po ba sa ating audience ang familiar dito sa person na nasa screen? Okay, I think, parang first time ata or okay, so wala naman po from our audience, so walang nagsagot, pero this guy po is Eric Ray. So he represented Philippines in the 400-meter hurdles and won Philippines its 4th gold in the 31st Southeast Asian Games last month. Or was it 2 months ago? In food preservation kasi, there's what we call, we have what we call the hurdle concept. So the idea of the hurdle concept is that you present small enough hurdles to ensure that the product quality is not affected, while at the same time you provide enough protection to the products against agents that can cause product deterioration. So instead of, say for example, instead of using preservatives alone, we can make sure that the product, say for example, the product's moisture or the product content is low enough para hindi mag-grow yung mga microorganisms and na-follow talaga yung GMP during processing, and you also can consider na yung packaging mo is robust enough to protect your product. So at FNRI, in the Institute, there are two common ways where we evaluate the shelf life of products. So it could be either through actual or a static method or via an accelerated shelf life testing. Each of these methods has its pros and cons. When we say direct shelf life testing, it means real-time study is conducted. So it involves you store mo yung product in the actual environmental condition it is meant to be stored. For example, if snack product, sa room temperature lang. For say meat products, for example, freezing temperature or freezer. This method creates an accurate estimation of the time it takes for the product na masira or mag-deteriorate. However, it also means that the testing can take a long time kasi actual mo siyang i-observe eh. So it would need more samples and you need to test more. So it can be costly. On the other hand, when we say accelerated shelf life testing, pinapabilis mo yung deterioration ng product. So in accelerated shelf life testing, conditions such as temperature, moisture content, or oxygen pressure is modified or are modified with the purpose of yung pag-accelerate nga ng spoilage ng food product. So this means na shorten yung time needed to conduct the shelf life testing and also can translate to lesser cost. However, yung accelerated shelf life testing po ay not applicable to all products kasi there are certain food products that hindi yung yung mode or yung when you accelerate the spoilage or the deterioration has an effect also on the products. Hindi magiging accurate yung makukuha mong ng result when you use it for other products or certain products. So it's product specific. It's not applicable to all products. So depending on the type of the product we have, we adjust our methods accordingly. As I have mentioned po kanina dun sa mandatory label information, shelf life is one of the mandatory requirement dun sa label. I have questions also received na paano ba sila makakapag conduct ng shelf life? Pwede ba nilang gamitin yung shelf life lang ng products na available sa market, parehas lang naman. For example, you say, cookies din yung product ko, so I'll just check cookies available sa market and then kopyahin ko na lang yung shelf life na nandun. But the thing with shelf life testing is it depends on the process that you have, the type of product that you have, the ingredients that you use in your food product. So you cannot just say na kasi parehas kami ng product, ay di parehas na rin kami ng shelf life. No, you have to have your products tested. Kasi malay mo hindi kayo parehas ng process, hindi kayo parehas ng equipment na ginamit, hindi kayo parehas ng packaging na ginamit. So your shelf life should be specific to your product. You can also, for this, there are a lot of laboratories who conduct or offer shelf life testing analysis. And the best way to start, if you are not located in the Manila area or if you are in the provinces, you can ask or request assistance from the nearest DOST regional offices. Okay, after our shelf life testing, we also test for the feasibility of your product. So new product lines must be examined for feasibility. So from safety concerns to pricing analysis. So most of the time, manufacturers engage in new product development, of course, to make profits. You're there to make money, diba, from your product. And in order to evaluate whether or not your product is profitable, you need to have an economic understanding of your total production cost. So when you say economic feasibility, it will help you determine or the average cost per unit to be able to help you compare it to the prevailing market price. And then you will also need to know whether the consumers will purchase your products at a price na mas malaki or greater than the cost it takes for you to deliver that product to your consumers. So by now, you will have enough data to complete your finished product specifications. So your finished product specifications will contain the following: the analytical data, so your physical, chemical, sensory, nutrient, and microprofile, the shelf life of your product, your packaging, your primary packaging, secondary, tertiary packaging if kailangan, and then of course costing. This is an example of a finished product specification. So this is for cereal flakes. So you see ingredient list, allergen information, product description, kung shelf life niya, kung ano yung storage condition niya, and then other information. In this case, they include the organic certification of the product, packaging, and important, yung analytical testing, which is the nutrient information. Okay, so after you have finished the processing stage of the product, you will now proceed to commercialization part. So when we say commercialization part, you also need the commercialization part to be well planned. In food product development, simply having good quality product does not guarantee the success. So your product must be coupled with a good marketing strategy. And in order for you to do so, you have to have a marketing plan. So just as you planned your product well, your marketing strategy must also be well thought of. So your marketing plan should be product specific and tailor for the product that you have developed. So it should include yung 4Ps. I think familiar, most of you, of the 4Ps, yung product. You have to be familiar with the product specifications. Place, kung saan siya i-offer. With this, arrangements of kung saan siya i-distribute will have to be decided or set up before full production, not after. And then promotion part. So what is your objective in promotion? Ano ba ang kailangan mong ma-achieve? Is it for information? Will you want to increase the demand of your food product? You want to differentiate your food product from the other products available already in the market? Or and the other P is on pricing. So you have to decide your pricing strategy. Will it be yung penetration pricing or yung parity pricing or yung premium pricing? It depends na on your purpose for the product mismo. Okay, so aside from the commercialization, you also need to consider then the key players in your food product development. So it takes a lot of roles to develop a new food product. In bigger companies, your food product development team will consist or will be composed of the product developer, the engineering and production side, the quality assurance side, the regulatory aspect, and of course, your marketing people. However, if you are still a small company and you don't have a lot of these, you don't have these people in your team, what can you do? So my suggestion is, of course, to take advantage of the offers or the services offered by our government agencies like DOST. So for example, if you have already the formulation, the product formulation, and you want to test it on a larger scale, there are regional offices that offer test kitchens as part of their services. You can also avail of the services and facilities offered by our food innovation centers. Now, if you have concept naman that you want to be researched on, wala ka pa nung actual product prototype, you only have the concept of the products that you want to be developed. So you can avail of contract research, so either from universities or research and development institutes like Dost-Fnri, or if ayaw mo nang mag-R&D and just you want to dive right into commercialization, you can avail of technologies that are ready for licensing. Again, as mentioned earlier by Ms. Anne, we have a roster of food technologies that are ready for commercialization or ready for licensing. So in closing, I want to leave you with this quote because this is a perfect description in food product development. Great things take time. It really takes time to carefully plan, execute, improve, and validate ideas in product development. So sure, meron mga shortcuts here and there, but those shortcuts are not sustainable and can end up costing you in the long run. So as food product developers in the making, as food product developers who are currently doing our work, and as food business owners, whether you are still considering food business or you already have a food business, you have, or we have, the responsibility to ensure that we have the responsibility to ensure our consumers that the products we have developed and have launched in the market have passed the rigorous process of R&D, so we can be assured of the product success. If you are interested, by the way, in technology licensing or in availing our contract services, you may send a letter of intent to our director, Dr. Imelda Angeles Segdepa po. The contact information are on your screen. And maraming salamat po.
Ayan, thank you very much po, Miss Van. So, virtual round of applause po para kay Miss Van. I think you will all agree with me na very siksik, liglig ang kanyang at umaapaw ang kanyang lecture for this morning. Miss Van, if we will read some of the comments here sa ating chat box, no? Sinasabi dito na ang ganda po ng lecture, very detailed daw po ang inyong presentation. Talaga naman pong siniksik ni Ma'am Van ang stages of product development into, I think, 1 hour lecture. Yan. So, and then Miss Van, nag-ask pala sila if we can share the PowerPoint presentation with our
Share a
participants
copy
po.
of, yes po, I can share a copy of the presentation po. No problem.
Ayan. Okay, so, and to add to that, itong din pong webinar natin is live stream po via YouTube. So, nandun naman po yung ating mga PowerPoint presentation. Pag nasa YouTube, mas madali nating ma-access yung ating mga PowerPoint presentation. So, let's go now to our open forum. Yan. So, do we have, ayan, sabi ni Sir Carl, no? Thank you and congratulations to a very excellent webinar. Okay, ayusin ko lang
Yes,
yung
ang hirap po
aking...
talagang isiksik yung food product development na topic in just like, lumampas na nga po ako sa allotted time.
Oh,
So,
yan.
there are a lot of subtopics that you can explore in detail. Kasi for example, the HACCP, the labeling, meron po tong specific talaga na training for that particular topic if you
Yes
want
po.
to really go in detail. So, yan po.
Ayan. Thank you po, Miss Van. So now, we are open now for the questions of our audience po. So, meron po ba kayong question na pwedeng i-ask kay Miss Van? Ayan, sabi daw, pasend daw po ng files, gagawa lang daw po ng ice cream. Ayan. Ma'am, sabi, Miss Van, we have question here. Ma'am, do you have templates of forms that we can use for product development documentation? Sample forms daw, ma'am.
For example po ba, ma'am, is yung mga, for example, yung sa food product development?
Yes, sa food product development.
Okay. I can share po some templates. For example, yung batch sheet, yung when checking yung sa specifications. But the rest po usually are tailored to your product, to your process. So it's difficult to provide a one size fits all na forms. I can provide samples po of the things that I've shared, like for example, yung SOPs and sample has a plan. Pero when it comes to product development, kasi if you are still on the prototype development part where you check yung sa different batches or different production runs, ganyan, it would really depend on you and your product talaga. Kasi it's difficult to, as I've said earlier, it's difficult to provide a one size fits all na form. Kasi depende po kasi talaga yun sa product.
Okay, thank you po, Miss Van. Ma'am, Miss Van, we have question here. Kung wala daw po sa FDA Philippines, yung particular standard, pwede daw po bang gamitin ang pwede daw mag-base sa USA FDA?
Yes po, you can also refer to other standards na available if it's not yet available in ours. Pero you also need to consider nga, kasi if it's not available in our own standards, will it be permitted to be used here in our market? So you also need to consider those also. So yes, you can refer, but you also need to check whether meron nga siyang specific standards for that particular product, but will it be allowed? Kasi there are products or there are certain ingredients na, for example, allowed na siya sa other countries, but still regulated pa siya here or not allowed pa here. So, yon yung mga considerations.
Okay. Sige po. Thank you po, Miss Van.
Yes
So we have another question po. Ano daw po yung mga food products na for FDA product registration? So ano yung mga products na dapat nire-register sa FDA?
If you plan po to commercialize your product, you really need to apply for CPR. So, lahat po ng food products that you are introducing or that you want to introduce to the market, you need to have it applied. Kasi that's the ano po talaga legal way of doing things. Yes po.
Okay po. So another question here, Miss Van, is it necessary to have all those types of food analysis po sa product develop po?
Pwede po kasing i-limit nyo na lang yung certain analysis na kailangan nyo. For example, hindi nyo naman kailangan lahat ng functional physicochemical analysis ay magawa dun sa product. Yun lang, interested kayo in terms of product quality, product safety. Kailangan, of course, for product safety, you need to have or you need to check, for example, yung micro contaminants, possible contaminants also, you need to consider that. And kasi yung kailangan nyo po, you think is needed in order to maintain the product's quality, product safety, and product acceptability. You can choose po whichever is more applicable to you or to your product.
Okay. Sige, thank you po, Miss Van. And then another question po, can we name a certain product with a commodity even if it is not the component with the highest percentage by weight? Ito yung dati, Miss Van, no, yung kung sinabi bang malunggay pandesal, lagyan mo ba ng isang dahon ng malunggay, ay pwede mo na tawagin na malunggay pandesal. So, ilang percentage daw po before we can name a certain product na ganun, malunggay siya or kalabasa, bread?
Kasi when it comes to naming, parang I think our we also FDA has set also standards for that. For example, if you only added a small component of a particular ingredient, you can just say kalabasa with pandesal, pandesal with kalabasa or pandesal with malunggay. But right now kasi the regulation for these kind of things, especially dong sa mga backyard business or small businesses, is difficult to do. Kasi if you are just a small processor and you want to claim as such and you're not registered and your product is not registered sa ano, it's very difficult for them to come after you eh. So once you register your products, you need to follow the guidelines set by the FDA, and it includes na din doon sa naming, doon sa ingredient list, kasi makikita din doon yung percentage ng ingredient na kasama doon sa product mo. So when they see na, oh okay, it should be named as this kasi dito lang naman siya sa dulong part. So those are the things na i-consider mo when you are applying if you want your product to become legal, ganon.
Yes po. In connection to that, Miss Van, no, so kaya nga po may mga analysis because this is a requirement.
Yes.
If you want your product to be registered with FDA po. No? So we
Yes.
don't want our products to be posted at the FDA website na hindi tayo registered. So if you will check po the website of the FDA, from time to time po nagpo-post sila ng mga products doon na hindi registered with them. And yun po, yung iba pong products doon kilala na hindi nakaka-renew ng kanilang product registration. Okay, ma'am, we have a question, I think, from DOST Calabarzon. So, ma'am, the app you mentioned earlier about the design expert, is it free to use or where can we get po The app.
Ano po, it's a paid software po.
Yes.
So, you cannot find the one I mentioned, the design expert, yeah, parang mga around, it cost, I think, mga roughly around 100. I'm not sure yung current price niya, 100,000. So medyo mahal po yung software na
Ayan.
gagamitin. And I think they're only ano ngayon, meron kasi silang perpetual license na tinatawag, wherein you can use it for well, hindi po na i-renew, meron ding subscription payment, parang ganon. But if you want to try po, they offer naman free trial period to familiarize yourself with the software.
Ayan. Okay, so let's make use of that po. Ayan. Sulutin natin yung free trial period. And then yung question po natin about sa food analysis. So the fees po of the food analysis being offered by Dost-Fnri are available po sa aming website. So you can check po sa aming website yung mga fee po ni FNRI for lab analysis. Okay po. So in the interest of time, dun po muna yung mga questions natin. If you have more questions po, you can email it to us and then we can assist you if we can possible po ibibigay po namin kay Miss Van yung inyong mga questions po. So I'm sure lahat po tayo may take away dito sa webinar na to. Ako po personally, madami akong natutunan, Miss Van. And isa sa mga emphasize sa akin is yung product na ide-develop mo, hindi lang dapat ikaw yung may gusto kasi baka isang customer ka lang, madami namang customer, ayan. So, talaga naman. So, yun yung talagang dapat isipin pag tayo ang inspiring mga food entrepreneur. Ano ba yung gusto ng iba at hindi lang yung gusto ko lang. Ayan. Thank you po, Miss Van. No? So, I'm sure our attendees this morning has learned a lot from you. And with that po, let me award po your certificate of appreciation for this webinar and let me read the citation. The Dost-Food and Nutrition Research Institute presents the certificate of appreciation to Vanessa Ibanez Ramas for sharing her valuable knowledge as resource person during the webinar on food product development held on June 29, 2022 via Zoom. Signed by our Director for and Scientist for Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa. Again po, a virtual round of applause po for sa ating speaker. Ayan. Ang ating pong mga palakpak para po kay Miss Van. Thank you po Miss Van for your time po to join us for this webinar.
Thank you so much also.
We have inspired them to go into food business this morning. Thank you po. Ayan. So before we end po, in order for you po to receive the certificate of participation, you need to validate your attendance to this webinar by providing the session code in the iTrain website. So we don't have attendance sheet po for this webinar kasi po you will validate your attendance via our iTrain website. So let me read po the instruction po to gain a certificate for this webinar. So please log in after this webinar. You can log in into your iTrain account. Validate your attendance by providing the session code. So we have the session code. So ito po ang ating session code for today, 45XMJW. So you have to provide it po sa inyong iTrain account. So dito nyo po yan ilalagay sa ating session code sa iTrain website. So, ilalagay nyo po dito ang ating session code na, ulitin ko po, 45XMJW po. So, ilalagay nyo po dito and then you will click validate code. Once na na-validate na po namin yung attendance, okay, you will take the post test and also you will take the evaluation form for this webinar or you will answer it. And after answering po, yan. So, you also need to validate your post-test. The same way kung paano nyo po na-answeran yung ating pre-test for this webinar. And then after po nun, ma-generate na po natin yung certificate natin for this webinar. Okay po. So, ulitin ko po ulit yung instruction natin how to get your certificate for this webinar. So, you need to provide a session code. So, you need to put the session code sa inyo pong iTrain account. Yung ating pong session code again is 45XMJW. So you will type it here and then you will click po this button, validate code. And then after validating it, you can now answer the post test and the evaluation form for this webinar. So magkasama na po yung posts natin and yung evaluation form. And then you will click po validate post test and then automatic na po na ma-generate po yung inyong certificate for this webinar. And because po we are using the iTrain website, we want to hear po your feedback, no? So last year po undergo po tayo ng updates po sa ating iTrain website. So this year po, inayos po natin siya ulit and gusto po natin siyang mas maging user-friendly. So we also conduct po beta testing for this website. So you can access po the beta testing questionnaire sa chat box po. So please answer po ang ating beta testing questionnaire kasi po makakatulong po sa amin talaga yan para po ma-improve pa po namin yung website. So your answers po last year dun sa ating beta testing ay yung po yung mga ginamit namin guide para po ma-improve po namin yung website this year. So we want to hear from you po ulit. So please access po yung ating beta testing questionnaire po. Okay po. Ayan. So at this point, let us now listen to the closing remarks of our supervising science research specialist and our section chief po, Ms. Edelia G. Glorioso. Ma'am Eden, good morning po.
Good morning, Ms. Celine. So magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. So our sincerest gratitude to all of you for attending this food and food product development organized by Dost-Fnri. We would also like to thank our speaker, Ms. Van Ramas, for your informative lecture. So ang dami po nating natutunan kay Ms. Van mula sa product development hanggang sa commercialization part. So one of the mandates of the Dost-Fnri is to diffuse food and nutrition research findings and recommendations. And one way of fulfilling this mandate is by conducting webinars like this. So kanina may nakita ako nagtatanong na kaagad paano daw maka-avail ng ating webinar sa food product and development. So thus you can be assured that all the learnings that you have gained today are based on the scientific studies. So with the ongoing pandemic, most of us here venture into food businesses. So kanina nagtanong si Celine kung sino ba yung interested magkaroon ng food business. Siguro sa lecture ni Ms. Van, marami nang maiengganyo na magkaroon ng negosyo. So hence, it is important to be equipped with the right information on how to develop innovative and nutritious food products. We are hoping that what have you learned from this training will be put into practice. We would greatly appreciate if you can give us updates or feedback on how this training help you in your actual work. We also encourage you to share to your family, friends, and office mates. By attending this training, you are with us in our commitment of ensuring optimal nutrition for all Filipinos. May we ask your support to pursue this commitment. Kanina po, nabanggit na din ito ni Celine, uulitin ko lang po. We may kindly ask you to answer the beta testing questionnaire or iTrain website. This will help us to improve our website and our services. Again, our sincerest gratitude for spending time this morning with us. So marami pong salamat at patuloy po tayong mag-ingat. So thank you, Ms. Celine. Thank you, Ms. Van.
Thank you po, Ma'am Ed. Okay. Thank you po for your closing remarks, Ma'am Eden. Ayan po. So, again po yung beta testing questionnaire, it will help us po talaga if you can answer them. And then last na din po, as you all know, the DOST-Fnri will be having po the 48th DOST-Fnri seminar series next week po, July 7 to 8 at the Manila Hotel. Kaya lang po ang parang full na po yung ating face-to-face. So, virtual FSS po, no? So you can visit po our website fss.fnri.dost.gov.ph to register po for our 48 seminar FNRI seminar series. So we hope to see you all there po sa ating FSS po. So CPD units po are granted po for nutritionist dietitian. I think it's about 8.5 units po for attending the FSS po. Okay po, thank you so much po again. So we wish everyone happy lunch and thank you po for joining us till our next iTrain webinar. Thank you and continue to be safe. Bye-bye po. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Sa white rice, vitamin at mineral, seksik pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda, para sa ating lahat ang brown rice. Calcium,
Papatibay ng buto
thiamine,
para sa healthy nerves.
niacin sa panunaw na maayos, magnesium, taga-ayos ng katawan mo. Halina kayo, kain na tayo ng brown rice. Masarap na mas masustansya pa kesa white rice. Vitamin at mineral, seksik pa rin, pampalusog ng katawan ng bata't matanda, para sa ating lahat ang brown rice. Sagot sa malnutrition, iwas cancer, diabetes at sakit sa puso. Konting kain lang, mabubusog ka na. Halina, tulungan ang bayan. Halina, mag-brown rice na.